So on today's episode of the firman inverter review, what we are going to try out is the PV feature. So what it means is that this inverter have the ability of working with just the PV, even without the battery bank. But presently I'm using it with my two battery bank here, 220 amps each, connected in series, giving me 24 volts. So I'll disconnect the battery to test if this inverter will be able to sustain this amount of load that is working presently from these two battery bank, or that is working presently on the inverter. So I have a fridge on, and here is the fridge. You can see the fridge is on, and my TV also is on now, but I'll show you my TV when I decide to disconnect the battery. So what we are going to check out now is the amount of energy that is being drained presently. We are going to compare it to see if this inverter will be able to sustain my load just with the PV without battery bank. So let's check how much energy we are consuming presently. So we are consuming about 210 watts, right? So I'm going to disconnect my battery bank now. These are my two battery banks. I'll disconnect the battery bank now and test this inverter direct with the solar panels to see if it will sustain this same amount of load, right? So let's try it out. So you can see I've disconnected one terminal of the battery bank, the negative side, and I put my DC breaker off. That's my PV breaker. I'll put the PV breaker back on, then put the inverter back on. You can see nothing is on the inverter screen, meaning there is no power on the inverter. So I'll switch this guy on, then put the inverter on to see if this inverter will sustain this amount of load that we are consuming initially with the battery bank on it. So I'm putting the switch on now to see if it will sustain my my fridge and the TV. So I just put the switch on. Okay. I don't know, maybe it's because of the surge from my fridge. So I'll put the fridge off to see how far, because it's displaying error 15, which means there is no battery bank. So let me put the fridge off and put the inverter back on. I put my fridge off. You can see the inverter have given output without the battery bank. I think what made it not to work earlier, it was because of the surge from the fridge. So now that it has picked up, I'll put the fridge back on to see if it will actually sustain the fridge surge for it to start working. But before I do that, let's check out the TV, whether the TV is on or not. So aside the bulb in the kitchen, these are other bulbs that are working from the inverter. Now the inverter is working with the PV direct, but it is not enough to sustain the surge for the fridge to start working. So you can see this soundbar is also on, this TV is on. I'll go back now, put the fridge back on to see if the inverter will sustain the surge for it to start working or not. So here is the fridge. Let me put it back on to see if our light will go off or not. It cannot sustain the surge. That's gone off. So the PV feature of this guy is not effective because I'm generating around 600 watt from my solar panels. So my fridge will consume just 200 watt plus at surge. So if you are getting this to use it with just the solar panels, that means you have to use it with appliances that does not require much surge, like your TV, your lighting point, your fan, charging your phones, your laptop. But anything that have to do with surge, the inverter will not be able to sustain, for your surge appliances to start running, to not be able to do that with the PV. So you have to connect the battery bank, even though it's a little battery bank or small size battery bank. You can just do that for the system to work properly.